Alright, so I'll be performing a compression test on a nice, beautiful Toyota Tundra 2007. The reason why it has a Milky Way in the radiator, and yeah, I'm sort of hoping for the best. I try to really be positive on some occasions like these, just hoping that somebody just poured a quart of oil in the radiator, which is sort of a rare occasion, but it could happen. This one time I had a client who poured almost 10 to 11 quarts in his engine because he didn't see that the oil was level to the cap spout. So I've been into some weird situations. Now, you already saw a couple parts on the floor over there. I removed the cover, I removed the intake, and I removed a ground that went to this corner here. It's right around here in the back, tucked around. See it right there. I took out the evap hoses that went down there. I'm going to cover that with a rag. And just basically disassembling all that I can. I already took out this. So this coil, for some reason, had a wire jumped with this guy right here. What I'll be doing when I assemble it back is just putting it onto a Wago, and that's it. But why is this here? I don't know. Alright, so yeah, I'm down to here. So I'll be removing all this harness, putting it to the side, just flopping it over here. We taking all this harness here, flopping it over here. Then I'll be doing the same over there, taking all the harnesses, flopping it over. Because I'm going to do a compression test. I'm going to take out all the spark plugs, put the pistons on top dead center, and put the compression tester on each cylinder. And let's see what we get today. So again, you'll be seeing I'm taking out all this, so I'm only a one-man worker with this phone and these two hands, so I won't be making much videos on this. I will just be giving you briefings, and that's the way I do my videos, briefings. So yeah, this is where I'm at right now. Alright, so I'm doing a leak down test with an OTC tool. Basically I have 90 psi on these gauges. As you can see, I have 90 on the regulator, 91, and I have 88 on the other. So 91, 88. 91, 88. So 91 on the regulator, 88 on the actual cylinder. That's a 3 psi difference. That cylinder is pretty good. So this guy's good. This guy's good. So on piston 5 and 3, I had on the regulator 87 versus 81. That's a 6 psi difference. It's borderline okay. Should be a 5 psi difference. Should be perfect. But I have a 6, so it's sort of okay. It's blowing by the piston rings. I did not warm up the engine, so that might be a little factor. But on cylinder 3, I had a bigger psi difference on 10, and it was at the same area, at the piston rings. So yeah, definitely has some issues on the piston rings here on this cylinder, number 3. And the way I knew it was the piston rings is because, see this balloon here? I put it now, but when I tested out the cylinders themselves, the two center ones, I heard air coming out of here. And there's only 4 ways to test this. So you got air escaping from the crankcase breather, which means defective rings or worn cylinder walls. You got air escaping from the exhaust system, which means defective exhaust valves or valve seats. Then you got air escaping from the carburetor or intake, which is this thing here, the throttle body, which means defective intake valves. And then you got air bubbles in the radiator, which is leaking head gasket or cracked block or head. So basically, if having this 90 psi, which I'm so having this 90 psi here, I'm going to take it out now. Release it. I don't need to keep on testing it. So if I were to simulate air bubbles, if this had a bad gasket on this side of the engine, I would see air bubbles popping out of here in the coolant. The reason why I'm cylinder leak testing this vehicle is because this vehicle's brought to me based on the mirror issue that it had a radiator leak, and it did right here, very minor one, but it's constant. And when I pop off the cap, it had white creamy oil sludge. If I can get some out of there so you can see it. Nope, doesn't want to come off. But you can see there's a little residue there. Hopefully I can take a bit more. Alright. So there you go. You got sort of a Milky Way going in there. You can see the white sludge right there on the little corner. So yeah, it does have sludge. And what I'm suspecting is if the engine is sound, then what that means is that I have this guy down here. I have something here called the engine oil cooler. I hate these things. All they do is just, their functionality sounds perfect, but the way they're cooled, I don't like it. So they have engine coolant going to here, taking away the heat from the engine oil. But when the O-rings crack or diminish in size or start going bad, in this last Chevy Aveo I should put up the video soon. The oil cooler was bad, and what was happening is that engine oil was getting into the coolant, but no coolant was getting into the engine oil. That was a very unique situation. The guy got by a hair, and his engine got by a hair. I fixed it up, and he got it back up and running, and that was it. This case, exactly the same. I have no engine coolant inside the engine, but I do have this mucky stuff going into my radiator. So what I'll do is, if I get another piston, so this one tested really good, piston number 1. If on this side, which I'm going to go to now, if I have any air leaks from the piston rings, I'll take another video so you guys see this balloon pop up, and you'll see that, yeah, we have defective or worn rings if we hear air escaping from the crankcase breather, which would be the dipstick or the engine oil cap. So, alright. So I'm going to start dialing in to 90, and I'll just leave you guys in front of that balloon. And here we go. 10 psi, 20 psi, 30 psi, 40, 50, 60. There's only a difference of 4 psi, so it's going to be a good cylinder anyways. 70, 80. Alright, only lets you go to 88 because of the leak. So 88, 82, 4 psi difference, pretty decent. You can see here we just have a little bit of a, seems like it was going to inflate, but it didn't. Looks like it is moving just a little bit at a time, but yeah, it's from there. So 88, 82, 4 psi difference, cylinder is good. Here's the results over here. 88, 82. All right, concluding the diagnosis for the Tundra. As you can see here, you got the chart. You can see cylinder 1, we got the regulator at 91 psi and the cylinder holding pressure is at 88. So the differential in pressure is 3 psi loss. That means, and obviously I had no bubbles out of the radiator. I had no air escaping out of the intake. I had no air escaping out of the exhaust, but I did hear and feel air escaping out of the crankcase breather, meaning I just took off the engine oil cap and I felt air come out just very lightly. So that's just the worn piston rings. But where I felt it the most was on cylinder 3 and 5. It had a 6 psi difference on each. For some reason, the first time I tried it, it was at 10 psi, but that's probably one of my top dead center issues. It wasn't perfectly at top dead center. And this time I timed it right, so yeah, it dropped from 10 to 6. That's 6 psi different. That cylinder is good. It specifies here that if it has more than more than a 10 to 15 psi difference indicates that it needs further investigation. But a difference of 5 psi between cylinders is satisfactory. So I'm at borderline 6 psi, so it won't matter that much for cylinder 3 and 5. But the rest are at 2 psi. Cylinder 8 is at 4, cylinder 6 is at 2, cylinder 4 is at 3, cylinder 2 is at 4. As you can see here, these are the results of the leak down test, and hopefully this video helped you out. Now what I'll be proceeding to do with this vehicle is, so this is the radiator. As you can see, I do have that white material going in there. You got the creamy stuff. So this is the top hose. That's the bottom hose down there. Let's see if I can give you a close-up. So right here, thermostat and the bottom hose. This has nothing else attached to it. I'm going to go in from the bottom. As you can see, this radiator has no oil cooler attached to it, right? But how is it getting oil into it? Well, here's the answer right here. I got this guy right here. This is called the engine oil cooler. I've only seen this happen once with a Chevy Aveo. The darn Chevy had this oil cooler between the catalytic converter and the engine itself, and the two hottest places in the whole place to put an oil cooler, and the O-rings got shot. In this case, this one is a lot more, I can say, away from the bunch, away from the heating parts. Like, it's basically next to the fan. But I'm suspecting that this guy failed because I have oil in my radiator, and I have nothing else oil lubricated attached to it, getting cooled by it. So it's this guy. So you can see you have two cooling hoses with radiator coolant going into them. This is a leak spot. So I'm going to drain all the oil. I'm going to take this filter out. I got to drain the oil on the engine back here from this bolt. I got to make sure everything's drained out. Then take out the cooler and replace it. And that part's a $740 part from the Toyota dealership, OEM. I can't play with this part. I tried to consult with the technicians if I can eliminate it or not. They don't want to give me a straight face answer. They just want to take it in their dealership and diagnose it, so it's not going to happen. If a guy can't tell me straightforward, look, man, you could eliminate it, you can't eliminate it, blah, blah, blah. Look, I'm not going to give you the car. I already been through a bad experience giving it to a dealership so they can diagnose something and confirm my diagnosis, and they just started swapping parts like crazy, and I'm not going to make my client go through that again. So, yeah, I got that. And with this, the part's going to come in tomorrow. So what I'll be adding today as repairs will be the radiator and the thermostat that's up here. And I'll be flushing this thing like, let's say, 5 to 6 times. Just to make sure that I don't have this creamy stuff lurking around inside the engine. And that's it. This is the basics of it. And just so you can see here, you got a cooler on here, one in the back. This is the one that goes all the way down. Goes all the way down to my oil cooler, engine oil cooler down there. So, yeah. We do have a leak in the system. Minor, but, and again, I know you guys are going to ask, look at the dipstick. The dipstick is clean. I have no oil on it. I have no water in it. This is the same exact thing that happened to a Chevy Aveo a while back. And seems like it's happening here too. And that style of cooler, looks, the Chevy Aveo had a different one. It looked larger, but still this looks like the same style. So, yeah. And obviously I had this guy on there. Doesn't want to come off. So, yeah. Do a couple things to it. I'm gonna put the spark plugs in, torque them down to spec, and take this radiator out. Call it a day.